Hey guys, Anthony here again. Gonna talk about four books I'm in the middle of right now. This is kind of an interesting situation because typically I don't really read this many books at one period of time. I'm usually just reading like two, usually like some sort of nonfiction and a fiction or something like that. But anyways, I'll just get started here. So the first thing on the top of my stack is Gogol's Dead Souls. Um, Really beautiful painting. Um, Forget what this is called. Procession in the province of Kursk. Yeah, I really like this painting here. There's a lot of movement. Lighting is great. Everyone has a face, and that's awesome. Like, yeah. But anyways, to talk about the book itself. So I have not read any Gogol before this. I feel like I'm kind of late talking about Gogol or reading him because I've read a lot of other Russian writers, but I kind of have this empty spot here with Gogol, and I felt bad about that. So yeah, so I was visiting my one of my high school English teacher, whom I still keep in correspondence with. Great guy. Is the shining light during some of those days in high school. But anyways, I was just talking to him about like, I've never read any Gogol. I've never read many other Russian writers except for Dostoevsky. I've read a lot of Dostoevsky, but all that other stuff, the classical Russian writers, that is, I don't really know much about. And so he was just like, well, and he grabbed a book off the shelf and he gave it to me, and so I got to read it now. I've got an obligation to read it. So for this one, I'm about a fourth of the way through it, a little over a fourth. Um, but so far, it's been pretty interesting. It's like kind of in the way that a lot of um, these authors in certain time periods and in certain geographical areas kind of write similarly. Um, this definitely follows that trend as well, which I don't know. I'm not surprised about, but it's just interesting to see that keep recurring. I really like the characters in this novel, and of course, I'm still like, very, very much in the beginning of this. I'm not really sure exactly what the purpose of the Dead Souls are. I'm excited to figure that out, but so far I'm looking forward to more emotional development in this book, which I want. More melodrama, I would love that, but at the same time I don't want to just ask for a Dostoevsky novel. I want Gogol to be his own person, and I'm excited to see how this book shapes out. But so far it's been pretty interesting. It's been really kind of strange, mostly just because of how Russian culture operates, and all of this like formality stuff, and all of that, and Xenia hospitality and whatnot. But anyways, next up, a nonfiction, Foucault's Discipline and Punish: The Birth of the Prison. I've actually been reading this for quite a while. I haven't cracked it open in quite some time. Let me see where I am. I am at part 3, Discipline. So I've made it a good bit through here. But one thing I really like about Foucault, and I kind of hate about Foucault at the same time, is that like sometimes his stuff is so well researched that like sometimes I feel like he goes into such depth on these points that aren't necessarily important to the argument he's trying to make, but like I can't really fault him for that because he's just showing how well researched he is, and like basically just blowing the whole scenario, the problem wide open And I think that that's pretty important, especially, in today's age. Like, Foucault has every single thing that happened, and he has the sources, which is like an academic wet dream, I guess. But um, yeah, sometimes you kind of have to be in the mood for it. But that's just how reading is, I guess, or all of that. But sometimes I really am interested in, every aspect of torture, every aspect of what qualifies a crime and what qualifies a remedy. And sometimes I'm just not, like, I just want to hear him say his thesis, and say the commentaries about that thesis. Um, but I know also, most of the time I'm probably just jumping the gun on what he's trying to say and not giving him enough time to say what he's trying to say, which is, like, I think my biggest problem as a reader is sometimes I assume too much. Actually, I think most of the time I assume too much, and I kind of see the end before even the beginning's begun. So this book is definitely going to be like a training ground for me, even though I am a pretty decent way through it. And also, one thing I will say, I hate it when books are annotated, but when it's a philosophy book and it's like every single page is annotated with highlights and stars and underlines and margin text, I think it can actually be kind of helpful. But that's just me. I know a lot of people really despise annotation, and some people don't really care. But I think I only do not care when it's a philosophy work. But anyway. And then the Journals of Sylvia Plath. So I started this back around August of 2023, and currently this is the last day of May. I'm filming this, so May 24, I guess. And I'm still not very far into this at all, but I kind of don't mind that all that much, because when I was starting it, I was thinking about, Plath writing this, and you can definitely tell that Plath knew that this was going to be read, which I think is interesting. I don't know how she really foresaw that with such a confidence, but you can definitely tell, and it's written very, very well. It's like basically an autobiographical novel, which I think is really cool, because I do love Plath. I've read, all of her poems that were published, and I care a lot about Plath as the artist and as a person. So when I was reading this for the first time, I was just thinking about how much actual time is being taken up during this entire journal. And it's basically, like, how far does it go? 62, I think. Yeah, 62. And it starts in, the 50s. I mean, that's 12 years. And, I was kind of thinking, romanticizing this idea of, like, taking 12 years to read this myself. I don't think I'm going to do that. Not quite that long, but I don't really personally mind reading like one of these, or a handful of these every other week or something like that for quite a while, over a long period of time. So yeah, I think this one definitely will be a book to kind of savor, and I think we should do more of that. I think we should do more of that, especially with the people that we like, the authors we really stand by, whether that be, their art or the person, or both of those things. And then the last thing I'm reading in the middle of, I just started this today, and I started it today because very soon I'll be going on a trip to Salt Lake City area, and I kind of knew this book was in that sort of Salt Lake City area, kind of Pacific Northwest too ish, and that is The Executioner's Song by Norman Mailer. I've owned this book for about a year, and I always keep forgetting that it won the Pulitzer Prize, and I always keep discrediting new journalism, which is probably, my biggest sin. My biggest literature sin is that I never really cared about new journalism. I never cared about Gonzo. I kind of cared about Joan Didion because I respect her. Um, but I always thought, Fear and Loathing, I mean, that's just a black and white guy's tripping. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about the rest of the world. I'd rather, listen to David Foster Wallace essays, which is a bunch of, baloney. Honestly, if we're being real, one of these guys is talking about real life, and then the other guy's talking about real life too, but just not as well. So Norman Mailer is kind of, it's kind of funny that I haven't really gravitated to him yet, because he has such an involvement in all of the things I like. I first came across Norman Mailer, I believe, just normal bookstore browsing. You see these big books, you kind of gravitate towards them. Your eye just catches them. Like when you see this spine on a shelf, that's like an inch and a half. You just kind of want to look at it. You want to pick it up. Like every time you see Richardson's Clarissa, like I know what it is, but I always want to pick it up just to flip through it once and put it back on the shelf, and that's all there is to it. But after that, the next time I would have heard about Norman Mailer, I believe, is when I was watching Robert Altman's Shortcuts, I think, which Shortcuts is a movie that was based off of some short stories by Raymond Carver, which I still have yet to read Raymond Carver, but Shortcuts is, these kind of interweaving stories of many characters, many celebrities in that movie, of course, making a film. But it's kind of like this is the first one of those Magnolia-esque hyperlinked movies, like Amores Perros and Magnolia, of course. But those types of movies really dominated for a long time, and I'm glad we don't have those anymore. Those movies, most of those are awful. They're just trying to copy stuff, and I just cannot deal with it. But anyways, the part where they talk about Norman Mailer is that one actress that was in Magnolia too. I forget her name. I'll put a picture of her up in the edit, but she was describing the story of how Norman Mailer in 1960, I believe, stabbed his wife twice with a knife, once in the breast and once in the back, I believe. And they're just talking about basically talking about the symbolism of that without really going into the exegesis. But sorry, I'm trying to fix the spine. I hate it when big paperbacks do this sort of thing. I despise it. But yeah, that story of him, I didn't really know him as an author, but just hearing that story about this guy, I would never forget the name Norman Mailer after that, and I always connected this name with Burroughs' name because of him shooting his wife in the head, but a similar sort of party murder or murder attempt, I guess, in Mailer's case. But I kept kind of putting him under my radar, even though I now knew his name and knew something about him, and I could kind of put a face and a story to each one of these spines I saw at the bookstore. And then I kept watching movies, and I saw Matthew Barney's very famous Cremaster Cycle. I think the second one has Norman Mailer playing Harry Houdini in it. And also, Norman Mailer directed a few movies. I haven't seen any of them. And this actually was made into a TV movie. I think it's like a 4-hour TV movie. Tommy Lee Jones is in it. Also, the most funny thing about Norman Mailer's like movie career is that he was going to be in Godard's King Lear. He was going to be playing the Don Liaro, like King Lear, basically, which is just hilarious to me, because we would have had a movie with Woody Allen and Norman Mailer playing Professor Pluggy and Don Liaro, respectively. I think it's so funny. I wish we would have gotten that, but apparently, according to Wikipedia, that didn't happen because Godard and Norman Mailer started having some sort of fallout, some sort of drama. Who knows? Which makes sense, I guess, for who these people are. But yeah, now I'm just really interested in Norman Mailer himself, and I'll talk about the book in a second. But I was also watching some interviews with him and Martin Amis that I thought were really cool to talk about the book. So I just started this. I'm about 30 pages in. I'm almost done with like the first part of the first book. But it's really, really interesting. Really interesting story. That's all I'm going to say about it, because with these types of books, it's like the story is the sunshine. The story is the life of this book. And I think the slow revealing of this over like 1,000 pages, I think it's really going to kill. It's really going to take my breath away. I hope it does. And it's also really going to accompany my trip really well to the Salt Lake area. I'll be thinking about this book, and I'll be thinking about SLC Punk. But anyways, that's all I've got. Tell me what you guys are reading if you see this video. But yeah, peace out.